Hey folks, Steve here with another Red Strike video for you today. This video will be covering at least turn 2 of the Fulda Gap scenario that I'm currently playing solitaire. And depending on how fast I go and how much I talk about what's happening, we may get turn 3. Otherwise, turn 3 will be its own video, and we'll probably tack a post-mortem on there as well. I've already done some things here since the end of the last video. I've done the reinforcements. Both sides get a recon point each added to their pool of recon points that's also been reset. Going from the previous turn, I've also added the reinforcements. Now, in terms of actual units on the board, the Soviets got 2 units right here, as well as some additional air, uh, mostly fighter types, that I have based at Altenburg here, which is kind of the closest, air base to the action, or the front line at least. Um, the NATO forces actually got a fair number of planes, a pretty big number of planes, in fact. And the problem is, I'm not going to be able to use them all as effectively as I want. But fortunately, because we're busy repairing a lot of other planes, those reinforcements are going to be able to fly missions this turn. So the doubt as to whether, I guess I forgot about reinforcements when I said at the end of the previous video that the Soviets would sort of rule the skies on turn 2. That's not necessarily the case. We actually have a fair number of planes that we will be able to contest, at least to some degree, what's out there, and in fact run our own offensives again against the Soviet attacking forces, which is going to be very important. We need to reduce their strength as much as possible and eliminate their ability to attack well and have the saturation of hits really take double effect when the Soviet units flip, for the ones that have not flipped yet from combat losses, ground combat losses, I should say. So we've got all that. There are reinforcing units for NATO here, here, a weird smattering of places. And in fact, there was one West German unit that could not enter the game because there is a Soviet unit in that hex, which means we lose it. But granted, any units at this point, even one like that, which is really a 6 strength armored or mechanized brigade, I should say, mechanized. That's a big help because those are strength points that we can throw in front of the Soviet advance and keep them from making progress. The real key, I think, at this point, and I'm not sure that I'm well set up to take advantage of it here right now, is we need to focus, now that we've made our initial breach over the Iron Curtain, so to speak. We need to use some of our Soviet units to crack lines here and then have plenty of units in reserve that can move after um, that first action stage and kind of follow up on our success. We weren't necessarily well positioned to do that on the first turn because we needed to eliminate and shatter kind of the front line a bit. But we're going to need to do that, or else we'll never make it to the victory line here. We won't be able to do it. We won't have enough movement points to get there. Unfortunately, there are a lot of units that can stand in the way of the Soviets. So unless something dramatically changes here this turn with how much damage we're dealing out to NATO, I'm actually expecting a NATO victory, that they keep the Soviets out of the Rhine, from crossing the Rhine, because they're simply going to be too busy, too run down from other combats and interactions with our defending units, that they're not going to succeed. But we'll see how it goes. I've not technically done the unit assignment phase here, so just reinforcement. So there's some remnant reserve mode units. We're going to have to reconfigure all of this stuff and figure out how we're going to do any follow-up attacks. So that's sort of the next step for me, is to set up those reserve markers based on our HQs and see kind of what we can do. How do we want to set up? What's going to make sense? I see the main drive is still really the north here, unless we pivot, and that's actually something we could consider because we've got some road network bits we could do. We could, for instance, shift south and attack here, and then exploit through along this road network line to the southern part here and be fighting in Frankfurt. So this is sort of that. It's hard to outsmart myself in solitaire, but but I could switch my axis of advance pretty easily here without costing myself too much in the process. So that's something I'm going to think about. I'm going to have to really examine my capabilities and what I want to do here. So that's a quick 5 minute intro, I guess, guys. Quick for me to say kind of what's going on. Uh, we have we do have some units on the NATO side set up for intercept and offense, so kind of a balanced approach. Soviets are mostly offense because at this point they just need to dish out damage. The one challenge will be most of the fighting is deeper in NATO territory, which advantages our interceptors that if we can detect, we're going to have an easier time getting an interception to work and to get up there and oppose. We do have cap being flown right now, so it's operating kind of in the main drive sector. So we could get something up front. We will intercept something that comes into our space. That's very, very helpful to have cap. It could get shot down. We'll see what happens. So there you go, guys. I'm going to go do unit assignment. I'll show kind of the outcome of that, and we'll try to get roaring into the first action stage. Okay, here we are after the unit assignment phase. You can see some obvious adjustments here around the reserve mode for NATO. They're really just to help bring units to the front quickly, just get them moving as fast as they can and try to react to what the Soviets do. The Soviets have gone pretty heavy on reserve units, actually. So it's kind of telegraphed. If this were an opposed game, you kind of see like, well, what doesn't have reserve markers? Well, it's these guys, these heavy hitters, um, and it's like, okay, well, what do you think's going to happen? Well, if we were going to continue on the trajectory that we've been, it'd be, oh, we're going to cut this way, but maybe perhaps unbeknownst to the NATO play, we're actually going to shift these guys down and hit right in here with the idea that if we can, open up that part of the map, or at least get a break here, we're going to send these reserves on through to Frankfurt. That's the idea, and then from there, we'll be in the final struggle to get a unit sort of over the hump, so to speak. Because ideally, what we're going to do is we're going to bombard the ever living crap out of everything around here, if we can. Assuming he doesn't get shot down by interceptors or whatever. And we've softened things up that we can punch through, and then NATO will have a difficult time trying to counterattack and cut off our supply. Because we do need to be in supply when we get to this hex or whatever. That's going to be important, so we can't neglect. But we're going to kind of reform a spear basically and have it cut in this way now that we've destroyed a fair number of NATO units. Now they're setting up a new line. We're going to crack the line, ideally do as much damage as we can. So much so that ideally, if I could, I'd love with these reserve units to actually overrun anything that's left over standing in the way. Um, I'm not sure if that's going to be likely to happen, but if there's an opportunity, that would just be the bee's knees to set us up for a successful turn three. That's the idea. Anyway, now both sides are going to be using recon to try to mark out kind of what's out there and what's going to happen. We're going to very likely run our air again through here, maybe in the backfield, soften up the potential for counterattacks. That's another thing we want to watch out for. If NATO tries a counterattack, it's not likely that they're going to be able to do much with it, but they could do just enough to throw us off or disrupt supply tracing, that kind of thing. So we got to watch out for that. So that's really it, guys. I mean, the scenario gets easier as you play it in this case because the long range missile units are off map. I'm not playing with the option that would have allowed you to resupply those with supply point expenditure. I just don't want to deal with that, to be honest. And now it's just we're playing with what's on the map. Units are being eliminated, units are coming in, but the rhythm is there, and we know what we need to do to win or lose. So getting easier by the moment. There's nothing to do with weather here, so as we get out of the unit assignment phase, supply really isn't a major issue at the moment for anyone. We're going to be headed just straight into the first action stage with Warsaw Pact with the initiative. Again, we're going to do recon, followed up by air activities, and then we're going to do movement, and we'll see what goes on there. And I'll probably play through all of the first action stage and show you the aftermath of that. So just know that we're going to do all that movement, air campaigning with the Soviets. The NATO are going to move. NATO forces are going to move their reserves as well as any air that they can try to execute. And then we'll have the combat, which again, if things go according to plan, ideally, while a couple of these hexes are kind of iffy looking, these two are probably going to be the prime candidates. We're going to be trying to punch through here, gain control of this railroad network cutting towards Frankfurt. That's the operational goal for the turn. So let's see what happens. Well, here's the result of the first action stage, guys. Kind of interesting. It turned out our little cap that could ended up proving incredibly valuable. These F-16, yeah, F-16s, managed to fend off a number of Soviet attempts to to get into the main area of operations, and have actually, it's kind of amazing. I feel like if we hadn't rolled so good as the Soviets on turn one, this could be a very different air situation, because just this one unit alone has actually fended off quite a bit in terms of interception and being able to engage and defeat, or at least, cause aborts to Soviet units that are detected, and especially because they have their beyond visual range weaponry. That's really how they were able to do it, was being able to fire their standoff weapons. That's only good for so long, and ultimately, some Soviet attacks still got through, but man, even one just helped so much. So those air reinforcements have come in handy. The actual attacks that have occurred heavily worn down this stack of NATO units, but did not cause a retreat, and they're holding the hex. Here, we took some losses and actually had to retreat out of the hex, though we're still in decent defensive terrain, and we still have some ZOC coverage. So the Soviets have advanced, uh, and I mean, so far so good. I mean, there's not much more to say. I didn't get exactly what I wanted, which maybe would have been more retreat results or something. We ended up, both sides spending a lot of supply trying to defend well. It's really hard to see if we don't get some excellent die rolls here to come. The Soviets are just going to get bogged down trying to chew through the defenders. I mean, that's really what the question is going to come down to here. We can't give up any ground that allows for overrunning or Soviets maneuvering around stacks that can't project ZOCs because they don't have enough regimental equivalents. But as it stands right now, I didn't quite get, I guess, what I wanted. Now, I still rolled pretty good as the Soviets on the combat die rolls. It's just CAS started to become a problem. We were missing a lot of air support rolls that required us to use more units. So we're using up a lot of our capability to try to make something happen here. Um, I'm not sure. I feel like maybe I didn't plan well as the Soviets. I feel like I should be closer to victory, and I'm just not quite where I want to be. But we're going to use our reserve units to get into. Well, I would have really liked to have sent these guys kind of through a hole. We didn't quite make the hole that I wanted, just not quite good enough. We would have needed um, to have done either more damage or something else. I think the combat table is really what's tricky here, guys. That there's not a lot of results. Like, you have to get pretty high in the results to really chew somebody up, and we're really not seeing a lot of that on the defender. So, like, you take some steps away. Maybe you get 3 or 4 strength points lost, but there's still units there. They're still holding the line just a little bit, and if they can keep doing that, it you don't make a lot of ground quickly unless I'm missing something. Now these units are getting weakened enough, they're getting flipped that they're not going to last much longer, but they're going to maybe last long enough um, to hold out. It's going to come down to the wire maybe on what units are left with steps that can take damage, even choose to take additional step losses to avoid a retreat, so it can't get back here. We're what, 1, 2, 3, 4 hexes away ish, kind of in the vicinity of that. Each move is going to matter. So yeah, the again air. We used up a lot of our air uh, trying to make something happen. Now we're going to get our other sorties, but I have to think about, is there any reason to hold any Soviet sorties for the third action stage? I'm not sure that there is, because I don't believe NATO's going to have enough oomph to really counterattack in great force. But maybe if I look at the counters again, I'll see some opportunities as NATO. It's hard. This is a game that is. I mean, there's enough here to keep you busy, solitaire. But I just feel like it would be more exciting because you just don't know what your opponent's going to choose to do. And I find myself like not being able to do any neat surprises or counter punches unless I truly miss something playing one side and capitalize it on the other side. It's really hard to do in solitaire. So all right, we're going to go to the second action stage. Again, we may see some movement with our reserve units here. We're going to have more combats. The goal, effectively, to break the into this line and ideally get towards these hexes to be set up for turn 3. The great turn 3 push, I guess, is what we're going to be aiming for. So, all right, let me go play the second action stage. We'll show the results. Okay, here we are at the end of the second action stage. You can notice the advance here. We have pushed forward. Um, though I'll say it's still a very, nebulous, fragile thing, because all it's going to take is a few hinges to drop for there to be supply issues tracing through here. Not that the NATO forces have a lot of capability to do that. Right now, we're 2 hexes away, but remember we have to stay in supply. And counterattacking is feasible. I mean, not don't mistake the lack of attacks for intention not to do so, but there's certainly going to be a need. I mean, these guys are going to have to pull back basically all the way into a defensive setup here. These guys might need to pull back and kind of go this way. They can't necessarily, just open up uh, the whole front without giving these guys an opportunity to sneak in the back. So yeah, I don't know. This guy, unfortunately, he was a strong unit, but he is actually looking pretty worn at the moment, and he doesn't have that many steps left. So there actually might be a good cause for NATO to counterattack and try to make something happen, because again, that these forces, even if it's up to this stack, one, 1, 2, 3 hexes away is maybe doable, but we'll have to see. All the reserves for the Soviets are used up. So really, as we go into the third action stage, it's NATO's ability to, because they still have sorties left for their planes, they're going to try to dish out some more step damage, reduce the units. There's very few Soviet units that are not flipped, so their defensive strength is just starting to run out of steam, right? But this is so close. We're so close towards the end. So NATO needs to use this third action stage as their big kind of burn off attempt to knock down the rest of the Soviet capability. And then, actually, you know what? I just realized I actually could have sacrificed my battle hardened status to remain unflipped, and I think I'm going to do that. So it was nice to be battle hardened, but I think I would prefer to have the combat strength at this point because we're going to need it. So mathematically, I'm not sure. This is worth a whole shift. So honestly, this could be many strength, equivalent of many strength points depending on the defender. But I think I want to keep strong here just so it's harder to attack them from the NATO perspective. Um, Either way, I think some counterattacks are probably going to be due. We'll play through that. I'll show the aftermath of the third action stage, again, going to be very NATO oriented, and the end stage. And what I'll probably do at this point, because the video is not terribly long, I'm probably going to go ahead and cover turn 3 in this video, and we'll just see if the Soviets can manage to push through anymore. In the big scheme of things, I think these Soviet forces are banged up enough that they probably would eventually lose the war of attrition here if we were to play beyond 3 turns. And I realize the importance of the Rhine, but to be honest, like it's not a do or die situation. I think we misjudged this. Like if this were really happening, I don't know that a Soviet division getting across the Rhine like truly spends you know means the end of the world for NATO. I mean, there'd be so much more context around that kind of situation if it had happened uh, hypothetically. So anyway, third action stage, guys, for turn 2. Let's hit it up. Okay, guys, here's the end of turn 2 functionally. There was a pretty big counterattack here and actually eliminated that spearhead Soviet division. And really, I'm kind of looking at this thinking we may be at the end of our rope here. I'm looking, trying to figure out, like, okay, where are our last good units? Could they punch through? Could they make a difference? I'm wondering. I'm trying to think it through because what we would really need to be relying on now, we've got some of these other units. They're really just backup at this point. This unit is still strong. It's still on its front side, but he's taken some hits. 21 strength, you triple it if you're spending all your supply. You're in the 60s. Maybe you try to push, and then you push again, and maybe you force a retreat, but I don't think they can make it. I really don't think that they can make it. So here's what I'm going to do, guys. This is shaping up to be a NATO victory. Like we just didn't get deep enough. And this feels very much like the other times I've played the Fulda Gap scenario where like the Soviets just can't make it. Like they start to run out of gas near the Rhine, but they just never quite get over it. Um, I'm going to try to play through the third turn. And I'm not going to stop at the action stages. I'm just going to try to play through some of turn 3, get to the logical point where like mathematically there's no way to win. And we will, we'll try to we'll try to talk it through. But I think we're reaching the end of the scenario already. I mean, if you look out across all the units, I mean, we've got some stuff sitting out there. They're not like done. They're not weak, but at this point, it's like a rate of change kind of thing. Like we really need to. I've started to pull back units even to occupy these hexes where you send this guy all the way through, he's maybe going to be lucky to be up in here at the grave. He like overruns everything successfully. He'd maybe be up here, but that's not really enough to make the difference. We're going to be continuing, to be trying to pull these guys back, and there's just too many strength points in the way. Like we can't force retreats necessarily, um, because they can always opt to take additional losses or go into deliberate defense. Now, granted, NATO is really low on supply, but it's going to be enough supply to hold out, I think. So I'm not sure. I don't know where the pathway to victory is because it's the attritional battle. You could kind of focus on that if we had more time, we had more turns, but to we have to go deep, and to deep you really need to destroy units. You need to focus all your firepower on knocking out strength points and then either overrunning or attacking at good odds, where you can ideally take no losses, dish out several losses, and then move ahead. And we just had too many cases where we were getting knocked down by NATO air, which is appropriate. I mean, NATO air is strong, and despite initial losses, NATO was able to come back and dish out some damage. So I don't know that NATO has enough supply that they're going to be trying to do a lot of airbase repairing, but they have enough capacity that they can still field plenty of planes that are going to cause NATO a lot of pain and stuff, or not cause NATO suffering, cause the Soviets suffering. So I'm going to play through. I'm going to go to turn 3. I'm going to see where we can get to, and you guys will see the aftermath here. Okay, guys, this is sort of the getting to the end of the first action stage of turn 3, and I'm going to call it. I'm just not getting where I need to be, and while there was some hope, the ability to absorb losses, shift units into place as needed on NATO. You don't see a lot of reserve markers here because uh, kind of started cleanup already. The cold harsh reality, and this is, I mean, again, this is not dissimilar from other Fulda Gap scenarios that I've played in other games. I just didn't hit hard enough, and I didn't make enough gains. Now, um, I guess you could say this is kind of the post-mortem part of the video. I'm not going to do a separate post-mortem video for this. I think at the end of the day, my strategy at the very beginning may have been flawed. I kind of pressed too widely, and I maybe really should have just focused all effort on a single point. You know, if I want to think of this like OCS or something. And I did a little bit too broad a front in the first action stage. I should have just piled on or done everything in my power to focus in one area, maybe put a few holding units in one place and just drill on one. Now I sort of did that up here, but I guess I just didn't do it good enough. Where I spread out my air, I really should have maybe did everything to concentrate very harshly on that single point and just really opened up a breakthrough. But it's hard. The rhythm of the action stages matters so much here, where you want to attack, advance, you want to have reserves to follow up so that you can make a bigger hole. And I just at various points, I found it hard to do that. Now, here's, I think, the big key thing. It is extremely hard um, to force retreats because you can always exchange, or you'll tend to exchange. If the defender is going into deliberate defense, they're not going to retreat. They might take extra losses, but they're not going to retreat. And you really only get retreats on, well, one particular result in the low numbers. And then if you get high enough, but I don't think we were ever hitting this high in any of our results. So it's really hard to force a retreat, which means your breakthrough, at least in this system, is going to come from just absolutely pummeling a hex with air to the point that there's not that many steps left. And then when you actually do your combat and you cause losses, like that erases the units that are left. That's the only real way to like deplete a hex of its defenders and advance and move through. And I'm just having a hard time doing that. Now, to my credit, I guess, as NATO, I continually shifted the weight of my defense in reaction to the Soviets, which is what you probably should be doing, and localized counterattacks where it makes sense do have benefits, because if you can cause those fragile Soviets to lose that first combat step and flip, you know, NATO has a lot of air too, so you are advantaged on defense, obviously, of just sapping the strength of the defender. They will eventually run out of steam, and I swear it is deja vu here. Like, man, if you watch my videos for NATO, the Cold War goes hot. Something very similar occurred here. You know, very similar, where we just weren't able to get there. Now, I think so much of this also comes into play for this being a solitaire game. You know, could you fake out your opponent? Could you focus on hexes or parts of the line that maybe the enemy's not expecting you to? Sure, and it's harder for me to do that. So, you know, if I can't surprise myself and I'm playing both sides very effectively, I think in a game like this, the defender is going to usually come out the victor, because you're going to get all these inherent, you know, advantages of the defense, as it is in most war games. We just didn't get to where we wanted to be. Now the air ended up being more interesting in total because and by the way, I didn't even add the turn three reinforcements because I suspect they weren't going to make that big a difference, and I was right. So keep in mind, there's a whole set of units I didn't even bring onto the board for NATO. Now, granted, that this was going to give Warsaw Pact some additional planes, but I was kind of in. I don't know how to say it, guys. I was kind of in a rush to end this because I got the feeling like the Soviets lost their opportunity. Turns one and two, I maybe should have been a little more efficient. Even if I added in all the reinforcements, I think the benefit goes to NATO, and they were already likely to win here, and that's kind of what we're seeing. Um, this is a good scenario to see everything, a full spectrum of the game rules together of air and ground combat and all the various things that you have at your disposal. My trouble with this, if it's trouble at all, is just it is a lot. It's a lot at every juncture to be moving the interceptors hex by hex and the escort strike package hex by hex, the interplay of CAS, and if you didn't hit with your first CAS deployment, are you going to try with others? How many helicopters do you have? We have a lot of helicopters on the map, so there's a lot of figuring out where to use the helicopters, and that can be very fun. I also did not utilize my paratroopers the way I probably should have, though I never ran across a situation where I really felt like, oh, that had been the perfect time to drop a paratrooper down. Despite maybe that spot looking nice at the moment, they don't live long by themselves. So, and I think I underplayed the Soviets, that's for certain. But there's also a lot of weight to the game, where even to just play through a little bit of the game takes a lot of effort, a lot of thinking, and in solitaire, that can be actually a little tedious because again, if you're playing your opponent, that sort of thrill of not knowing what your opponent is going to do or how they're going to react is kind of, you delude yourself into thinking you've got a really great plan and you feel better. But in a very complex, very methodical thinking game, solitaire, you're really grinding against the wall. And in here, it was, well, they're both going to be very nimble operators here, and that goes to the defender. Um, I do think this is a great scenario to play. Even two players. You could still probably do this with teams, even if the map situation is a bit constrained here, where one player's managing the air and the other player's not, and they're taking breaks, eating a sandwich, while the ground warfare guys are doing their thing. Um, but this is a good set. I mean, I think this is a very reasonable scenario to try out. The only problem would be, I think NATO is certainly taking the back seat in the scenario to play. I'm sure this, we mentioned this earlier. This is kind of probably part of the campaign game, where on the outset they're on the back foot, and then they'll slowly be able to maybe turn the tide, maybe outlast the Soviets, because they can't project strength very long before becoming brittle. Now, I didn't play with a lot of options. There's plenty that we could have thrown in. Doctrinal optional rules that kind of limit the Soviets or make it a little harder for the Soviets to operate. I chose not to go with those. I feel like those would have slowed things down even more, and this was already a very kind of slow moving game for me. Um, so here's what I think I'm going to do here, guys. I mean, this was my sort of big execution of the game. Even cleaning this up, uh, it's going to take some time. I think I'm going to roll into the review next. I played every single scenario in the box? No, but I've certainly played a lot, and I think I can give my thoughts, my piece, my review on this game. It is ultimately a fantastic package, so we'll certainly hit that. But I get the feeling like at the end of the day, this product also might not be for everybody, and there are some parts that will maybe drag because of the complexity that's involved here. But complexity is an acquired taste, and somebody either lives and dies on complexity or will want to shy away. I think that's going to be a big part of what I articulate in that review. But hey, that's to come, guys. So, kind of an oddball video here, guys. I know you didn't get to see a lot of the counter to counter movement stuff, but this is really meant to display the overall flow of a scenario like this. And again, we got to see long range missile units, the air combat. We got to see the advance, HQs advancing, cap, variety of things that shift the game momentum. And it wound up with a result that matches kind of the results I see elsewhere, which means it must be pretty close to being spot on here. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video to whatever degree that you could. We will see you in the review video if you are going to watch that. Otherwise, take care, folks. Keep gaming. We'll see you in the next one.